In this tutorial, I will show you how to edit portraits. So what I have here is a portrait, and I have done my basic adjustments, which you already know how to do. I do want to say before I start all this, though, that it may look a little bit different than yours because I am working with Adobe Photoshop 19 on a Mac instead of a PC, so it might look a little bit different than yours, but everything's pretty much the same. So I've done my basic adjustments, which you guys already know how to do over here. The only thing I want to say about that is as you are doing these basic adjustments, make sure to pay attention to skin tone. Don't overdo it. Don't make the skin tone too unnatural. Pay attention to the colors and pay attention to the shadows. You could use things like my levels I used and pulled the shadows in the midtones so that there wasn't as much shadow on her face, and so this really dark horse wasn't so dark that you couldn't see details in it. So the first thing you're going to do is all your basic adjustments like you always would, whatever you think is best for your portrait. When you are all done with that, you are going to go up here to Layer, and you're going to go Flatten Image. That is just going to take and put all of those basic adjustments you did just on the background. It'll simplify everything a little bit so that you don't get so confused with so many different layers. Okay. Now, anytime I do a portrait, I make sure to duplicate this background. So I pull it down here to the new layer tab, and that makes a copy. You'll notice that my background is actually locked, which means I can't do anything to it. And that's exactly what you want. So you want this background to stay, you know, the way that it is, normal, untouched. And you're going to do all of your edits on the background copy, which is really nice because if you mess anything up, you could just turn it off or delete it and you still have your picture and you could start from there. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is zoom in. You get to know your model really well when you're editing some portraits, especially if you have multiple portraits. All right, first thing I want to show you is the spot healing brush over here. The spot healing brush is like magic. Its purpose is to cover up spots, but it does it automatically by looking at the pixels around your spot and filling in this circle with whatever is around it. You always want to, when you're doing anything on a face, anything on skin tone, you want to make sure that you have a soft brush, like a fuzzy edged brush, and you want to make sure that the size of your brush is the same size as whatever you're trying to cover up on your portrait. So the brackets on your keyboard, which are right next to the P, will make your brush larger and smaller right on the screen so you could see visually what you're doing. So with the spot healing brush, you can come over here and you could start just filling layers. They're filling holes, filling spots, I'm sorry. And you go right over the spot and it looks at what's around that spot and fills the spot. Okay. You always want to make sure that you can't actually see the spots that you are going over. Okay. A few helpful keyboard shortcuts. If you hold down the space bar, it'll give you this little hand, and you can move around this hand as you are zoomed in, which is really nice. Okay. Let's see. So that's the spot healing brush. I wouldn't do that too much on the face. You know, if there's a couple little blemishes or a couple, like there's a random hair right here, I follow it and it fills that right in. Okay, so it's really nice. You got to make sure that it works well. Okay, always make sure that everything looks correct, and if it doesn't, remember you have your history brush up here, which keeps track of everything you do. And when I mean everything, I mean like every single time I clicked on that healing spot brush, it kept track. And if I didn't like that, I could go back up to duplicate layer and it start from there. But it did a pretty good job, so we'll keep it around. Next is the clone stamp. The clone stamp works kind of the same way. You hit the clone stamp and you have all your options up here. So you have your brush, which I always make soft. I make it fuzzy. Your blend mode should be on normal. When you are working on skin tone, your opacity should never be at 100% ever, ever, ever. Always bring it like way down in the 20s or the 30s, okay? So here's what the clone stamp does. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, okay, with my brackets by the P on my keyboard. You hit Alt, and when you hit Alt, it gives you this little crosshairs, and you click. When you click, it selects a color, okay? Selects whatever you click on. So Alt, click, and it selects a color, and you click again and see the X. It's taking whatever is behind the X and putting it in the circle. So, and if you notice that X moves with you, so if you move, it moves too, okay? So I'm going to bring this opacity up a little bit more so it makes a little bit more of a difference and you can see what it's doing here. Alt-click to select the color. You always want to click next to whatever you're trying to do, okay? Now I am trying to soften some things, right? I want to make, if you notice over here, her chin is kind of blotchy. I'm going to make a bigger brush, Alt-click, and I'm going to go over this a little bit. I am using my graphic tablet to do this because it's kind of like painting, if you think about it. It's really nice to be able to use the graphic tablet and paint your portraits. And you all have graphic tablets that you can work with. Right next to your computers, and all you have to do is plug them in and it works just like a mouse. So you can try that out, okay? Now, when you are doing facial features, I always lighten underneath the eyes, okay? So remember how I just told you that the layer mode is on normal when I did all that cover up. I'm now going to take it and I'm going to move it to lighten. Okay, because what I want to do is I want to lighten up these dark spots under her eyes. I always do that with a portrait. Everybody always has darker, like circles, shadows under the eyes, and it makes a huge difference if you lighten them up. So I'm going to Alt-click to select a color. I'm going to go right along her eye. Now, you might not think that it's making a huge difference, right? It's doing it a little bit at a time. Alt-click, Alt-click. There we go. And I don't want to get rid of them 100%. I just want to lighten them up, okay? You get rid of lines or wrinkles or shadows 100% and it looks fake. But if you just lighten them up, it looks real nice. Here, let's back up. There, boom, boom, boom. That's what it looks like. Still there, just way lighter, okay? You can also move this to darken. And there we are, darken. And if there's a glare, like if you don't like the glare on her nose, I can Alt-click and go right over the glare on her nose, and it takes it and darkens it up a bit. This is like magic. I'm going to take it back to normal for a second, and I'm going to go over here. So this is how they do in the magazines. This is why everybody looks so perfect. Nobody's ever perfect, remember that. It's all Photoshop. Photoshop magic, okay? Alright, so there we go. So that's a good start on the face. I also want to mention that I'm going to Control-0 and go to full screen. You don't have to use the clone stamp for just facial features. You can get rid of other things too. So I'm going to go over here and put it on normal, put it on 100%, and these orange cones are quite distracting in the background. I'm just going to get rid of them. Magic. Told you. Photoshop. Magic, right? Be careful though. Okay, be careful. I don't want to go into the wrong color, and you notice I'm Alt-clicking right next to where I need to be, alright? And then if you notice, this color actually bleeds onto the white a little bit. Right? Make my brush a little bit smaller, Alt-click, and go along the edge, try to get rid of that. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Good, 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 good. And then I can Control 0 to full screen, make sure it looks okay, make sure she looks okay, whatever I want to do, okay? So let me show you before and after. So I'm going to turn off this background copy because the background is just the normal picture, right? Take a look at her face, watch. There's the before, there's the after. Before, after, before, after, before, after. Now notice, I think I made one mistake that I would change, yeah, if I were doing this for real. Look at her chin right here. See her chin right here? It's shadowed, right? When I covered it up, I accidentally put the wrong color there. So now she's got this weird, weird shadow on her chin that doesn't make much sense. So you have to make sure that if you're covering things up in the shadow, that you choose a shadowy area to cover up. And highlights in the highlights. You have to be very careful. You can really screw up somebody's face. You can also like clone an eye and give her a third eye. That's a lot of fun to try too. You do that to your friends. Okay, so the next step I'm going to show you is how to actually smooth out the skin. Okay. And to do that, we actually need to get rid of these two layers. So again, I'm going to go to Layer, and I'm going to go to Flatten Image. So now I have just one layer, okay? I am then going to copy this again, okay? And you'll understand why in a minute, all right? Now, the background copy is going to stay normal, untouched. It's actually locked, which is okay right now. I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, and Surface Blur. Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. This shows you, there we go, you could zoom out if you want to. You can also see it here, okay? I'll uncheck my preview. So there's before, and there's my surface blur. Okay, I am going to blur out her face, but not this much. Pay attention to just the skin, okay? Just the skin tone. And all I want to do is play with these slider bars until the skin tone is just a little bit smoothed out. Don't pay attention to anything that you don't care, just her skin, right? Just her skin. It's kind of like those Snapchat filters that you guys use, except those Snapchat filters are like crazy blurred and look stupid. This is going to look good, right? Just a little bit. That's too much. Just a little bit. I'm going to take it down. You can also use the keyboard, your arrows on the keyboard, if you want to go down like just a number or up just a number. All right, that's good. I like that. I'm going to say okay. All right, so I have blurred her skin, right? And blurring the skin is nice. It gets rid of all the little imperfections, makes it look pretty perfect, okay? But there's things I don't want blurred, like her hair, her eyes, her lips. Those shouldn't be blurry, right? So here's what we're going to do. I'm actually going to double click on this and say okay, which unlocks it, right? I'm going to go back to my background copy and I'm going to give it a layer mask by pressing this button right here. Gives it a layer mask, okay? Now, the background copy is the blurred picture. If I turn it off, there's the unblurred picture, right? Behind it. The layer mask works like this. If you use a brush, which is here, and you click on these two little squares, it makes it black and white. If the black brush is on top, you are hiding this picture and seeing what's below it, okay? So I'm going to make this small. And again, you could change your brush, you could change your opacity, you could do all kinds of fun things with this. But I'm going to go right over her eye, right? There we go. Brings back her eye so it's not blurry. I'm going to go over her eyebrows. Those shouldn't be blurry. Right? Over the eyebrows. Over her eye. Yeah. Over some of the detail in her nose. Just here. Over her lips. Okay. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to give her a bigger brush. And I'm going to go over her hair. okay? So this is bringing back, okay, sorry, my recording cut off there. So I'm on the brush, I'm on the black brush, and I'm going to go over different parts that I do not want blurry, okay? I do also want to mention that I am selected on the layer mask here, not the picture. If I'm on the picture, it's going to make a, oh, purple, not purple. Purple is not the answer. Should be black and white, remember? There we go. It's going to make a black line or a white line. It's only magic when you're selected on the layer mask. So with my black on top, black hides my blurry picture. I'm going to go through all of the picture and hide anything that I don't want to be blurry. I don't want the horse to be blurry, right? I'm going to go over here. You guys could take your time, but I don't want to run out of time with my little recording here. But you get it. And you can also see over here, it's turning black where I'm painting black, right? Okay. So take your time, be careful, zoom in. You can also use this to make some really cool effects. So say you only want one part of your picture to be, I don't know, darker, lighter, a different color. You can remember to copy the image because you always need the original. There's the not blurry one. Always need the original under there, and then you make the changes to the top one, and you use the black to hide that top picture so you're seeing what's behind it. Now, if you accidentally go over, like boom, accidentally went over her face, right? But that's exactly what I want blurry. I can always flip it so that the white is on top, and I can bring that back, okay, so that it's blurry again. Okay. It's a little magic for you there. And exactly what they do in the magazines. Okay. But of course, make sure you guys don't overdo it. You want to make sure that everything looks natural and realistic, okay? And not way overly done. I am sure you have seen those things, filters lately, that have just been, you know, so smoothed out that it looks unnatural. All right, so be careful not to do that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to actually go to layer and flatten image again. So now I just have one and we're all set to go. Now some other things you can do. Now that I have that, I'm going to go back into her face, right? I want to show you the dodge and the burn tool. The dodge and the burn tool is here. The dodge tool makes things lighter. The burn tool makes things darker. So I'm going to go into the dodge tool. I'm going to take my opacity way, way down, okay? And in the dodge tool, you can make things lighter in the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights. I'm actually going to go highlights here. And I'm going to go right along her eyes and make the whites of her eyes a little bit whiter. Now this is definitely something you don't want to overdo because nobody's eyes are 100% white, okay? They'll just look crazy if you make them 100% white. But they look really nice if you lighten them up just a little bit. So let's give you a before and after on the eyes, right? I can also take and go to the burn tool. I'll take this down a little bit and make it a little bit like way, way, way smaller. And here's where you can fake in. We'll start midtones and see what that does. Some eyelashes if you want to. A little bit of eyeliner if you want to. Make the eyes stand out by making these a little bit darker. Right? See what I'm doing there? That might be a little too much here. Don't go too nuts with it. Right? But it's nice to kind of darken up a little, couple little things. Make some things stand out a little bit. Right? Make the eyes stand out just a little bit more. That's cool too. So, and I'm sure you could think of other ways to use the dodge and burn tool. Don't go too nuts with it. Starts to make things way too dark or way too light in a portrait. I can also go down here to her lips, and I could use a brush tool, right? And I can click on the color. And what I can do is I can select part of her lip, and it'll give me that color. If I want it lighter, I could select the lighter part, I could select the darker part. I'm definitely going to take this opacity way down. You don't want it to be solid. That would just look really crazy. And it would take all the texture out of her lips and look fake. But if it's see-through, you're still seeing the texture in her lips. Then I can kind of try to like even out some of the tone in her lips here. Make them pop a little bit more if I want to. Okay. Brush tool. There you go. There's a before and after on the lips, right? Control 0. There you go. Very nice. Okay. I think that's all I really want to show you right now for now. A lot of people always ask me how to make the teeth whiter, right? Let me see if I can find a picture. She seems to smile with her mouth closed. See if I can find a picture with teeth. There we go. Let's open him up real quick. Okay. Everybody always wants to know how to make the teeth whiter. Okay. Here's my trick for making teeth whiter. Now, his teeth are actually pretty white, so they don't really need much. But the deal with teeth is they're usually too yellowy toned, and we need to get rid of the yellow tone. So here's what I do with that. I actually select just the teeth with the quick selection tool. And here's how the quick selection tool works. Again, we've got a brush, and you drag it over the teeth, right? And it selects the teeth, which is actually pretty brilliant. Now, if it selects what is not teeth, you want to take that brush smaller, hold down Alt, which subtracts from your selection, and go around until it gets just teeth, okay? You've got to finesse it a little bit, but you don't want anything besides teeth. You just want teeth, okay? So you've got to, get in there. So take your time and do this well, okay? But when you're doing this, nope, there we go. When we're doing this, any selection you make, right, or any adjustment that you make will only make that adjustment to what you have selected. So right now I only have this part of my image selected. So if I go to color balance, which I typically do, I usually take and I move it towards the blues, right? Well, I'll do it a lot so you can see. See how it's just affecting the teeth. Ew. So you want to take some yellow out, like it was at 0, right? So I'm going to move it a little bit here, but you don't want to move it so much that it starts to actually turn blue, right? There we go. That's usually a great way. There you go. His teeth weren't too bad, so that's not a huge difference, but you get the picture. That is a great way to make teeth whiter naturally and not make them look abnormal. Okay. All right, so those are some quick things to get you started. Remember, don't overdo it. Remember, when you're all done, you could save it as a Photoshop document and a JPEG so you could go back in and make more adjustments, okay? So just don't overdo, keep everything natural looking, and pay attention to skin tones and shadows and highlights. All right, have fun.